All right, so you've heard the rumors that, people make fun of America. They make fun of our schooling, our intellect. So today we're focusing on the Brits. We're going to ask, why do the British look down on America? We're going to react.
How do you feel the British perceive Americans?
I feel like there's quite a lot of, I hate to say it, but mockery involved.
I think a lot of people think Americans are extreme.
Do you think that the British think that they're better than Americans?
I think some do, yeah.
There's a lot to make fun of, I think.
We're also fantastic at queuing as well. That's another great thing about us.
Rubbing me the wrong way, too extra. It doesn't seem like it's genuine.
Today, I'm in London to get...
Wait a minute. There was a lot right there. We're too extra. Oh no, we are kind of extra though, aren't we?
to the bottom of a very important question. For as long as I can remember, I have had the sense that the British look down on Americans. This is a generalization.
Oh, and then I want to say, it almost depends too on obviously people are individual and their personalities are going to come to play on how extra they are. But just depending on what culture you're from in America, some cultures, because we're such a melting pot, some cultures do tend to be more extra than others. The lingo, the style of dress. So it just depends. But I notice a lot of times Americans, they're stereotyped as the fat American that's fat and loud and irritating, eating a bunch of burgers. But we're going to see what they have to say.
And therefore doesn't apply to everyone. But it's a strong enough trend that I felt I needed to investigate this further. Here's a quote from Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, that perfectly captures the feeling that I have about this. With some, the anti-American sentiment ran very hot. I was reminded of my childhood, when people warned me all the time about Americans. Too loud, too rich, too happy, too confident, too direct, too honest. I'm very curious what people are going to have to say about this. I have a feeling I'm onto something, okay? So, having said that, let's start talking to some people.
I always feel really terrible that everyone's first attitude is, oh, you're from America, are you? Oh, okay. Which is always a bit, you always feel a bit...
Is that everyone's immediate attitude? You're from America, are you? Are you quite really?
A bit bad about that, because I'm not entirely sure why we still do that, but
Yeah. How do you feel perceived as Americans by the British here in London?
A big, stupid, bellowing oaf. Yeah, genuinely. I always feel like I have to apologize for being Americans. I know my accent's the worst thing you'll hear today, but can I just order a coffee?
My experience, I feel like, has been a little bit different. I think that might be somewhat informed by the fact that I'm a student here.
Okay.
At first, there was a bit of a learning curve. When I would speak loudly on the tube, I would kind of get looks, and people would tell me, you're being American, you maybe not.
I have to admit, the inspiration to make this video came when I moved to Europe. As I've explored in previous videos on this channel, many Europeans have mixed to negative views of Americans as dumb and uncultured. But to my surprise, the same goes for the British. I've come to realize that the only people that see the British as intelligent and sophisticated are the Americans. Many Europeans, like the Portuguese or the Spanish, see a very different reality.
Oh. Wait a minute. That's something I never knew. So he's saying that the surrounding European countries, a lot of them view the British the same way that the British view Americans. That's interesting, because that's something I've never heard before. I never knew that.
Reality. The British that go off on holiday to get extremely drunk and break things. The British that are isolationist with Brexit. The British that don't learn foreign languages, that stick to their native tongue. Wait a second, I thought to myself. That's what Americans do. Other people do this as well?
How dare they copy us?
I kid, of course. Still, it does feel like the Brits act like the Americans of Europe, but I am certain that is not something that they'd like to hear said about them. I mean, no offense. I am American after all. Does that not prove my point, though? No one wants to stoop to the level of Americans. I felt I had to get my answers directly from the source. My perception is that the UK is 1 foot in Europe, 1 foot like in the Americas. It feels like it should be in the middle of the Atlantic. Do you agree with that?
I think that's a pretty conclusive idea. But yeah, I think that's definitely true because a lot of people wouldn't even class England as being in Europe. You know, even in England, when you talk about going to Europe, no one ever thinks you mean Doncaster. They always think you mean Germany. You do get some perception that everyone's some sort of like a Valley girl accent or something like that. And I think that annoys people quite a lot. But then again, it's the same way that English people are often perceived as all sort of being from London. You got the American dream, making yourself better and being seen to be self-improving. And it's a lot about earning money and being the best you can and going to the gym and all these kind of things.
Do you think are you saying it's positive or negative?
I think it's a positive thing for Americans, but I think the way it's perceived is often everyone goes, oh, get out of my face, you know, because no one likes to enjoy someone else's success, at least in England anyway. I think in America it's probably very different. Oh great, you got a promotion.
The identity of being American is like such a thing,
right,
that I don't think other places have that as much.
I don't think people are necessarily dumb, and I don't think.
Yeah, I get what she means. Like in America, we're like we're number one. I guess like most other countries, not all, some are really proud of where they're from, but I don't think most other countries, especially in Europe, are like, Germany, we're number one, or France, we're number one. But I could be wrong though. But I know we're known for being like, we're the best around, like having this attitude of we're the best.
I think it's a question of being dumb. I think it's just that there's this idea of like, being the best. To think that like people in America, depending on where you're born, you can have access to care or not, it's frightening. And I don't know how you can speak about being the best when you can't even make sure that everybody's like taken care of. Are you treating everyone the same way in America? No, not everyone is treated the same way. Just like not everyone is treated the same way in Europe.
Ew, she kind of called us out. She was like, "You're trying to call yourself the best? Well, let me tell you, you ain't made it there yet, ma'am. According to my report card score." I mean, she almost had like a bitter taste in her mouth for America. Almost sounded like, right? I don't know.
You're cute.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
How do you feel about Americans thinking you're cute?
Well, it can be taken as a compliment, obviously, but if they
I say that all the time. I'm like, oh, especially the British kids, right? The youth. I say they're so cute because they're so well behaved and mannerable.
they think that we're like, as a country, not really a force to be reckoned with, then just because we do all these like things that date back to long before the US was established, it's not really relevant that they can mock us for that.
Is it condescending, would you say?
A little bit.
Or ignorant?
More ignorant. It doesn't like hurt me.
How do you feel Americans perceive the British, first of all?
They kind of look down on us.
You feel that?
I feel like Americans think like they're on top of everything, and there's always competition between the two.
So do you feel like the British have a chip on their shoulder a little bit because of that?
Yeah, a lot.
What do you think the British are better at than Americans?
Yeah, polite, really.
More polite?
Yeah, more talkative, more helpful.
Okay, that's true. He said, "What are the British better at than Americans?" He said they're polite, really, and they are. Okay, in general, obviously, there's gonna be, people who fall outside of that scope, but in general,
more talkative.
okay, I don't know. Most of the people that I've watched videos about, they talk about how when they come over to America from the UK, that we're the ones that are way more talkative, making small talk, whereas in the UK, it would not be normal to be passing by somebody and they want to stop you and make small talk. So, I don't know I don't think I agree with him on the talkative thing. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments.
More helpful.
More helpful. The British are more helpful.
Yeah, than Americans. But Americans are nice. They're funny. Got good music.
Got good music. Okay. Well, the British have good music too, man.
Americans are taking over the music scene.
But I mean, come on. There's a lot of great British music. So here's the thing that I think is going on here. We are not the same, the Brits and the Americans, but we sure have a lot of similarities. Compare us to the Japanese or to Native Americans or to Ethiopians, and the differences between Americans and the British seems relatively small. We're like blood siblings in the village that is the globe. So here's what all of this started to make me think of. There's a concept in psychoanalysis. I'm going to read you the definition, but it's called the narcissism of small differences. This comes from Freud. The narcissism of small differences is the idea that the more a relationship or community shares commonalities, the more likely the people in it are to engage in interpersonal feuds and mutual ridicule because of hypersensitivity to minor differences perceived in each other.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes like a super lot of sense. Have you ever seen somebody who like they look like another person? Like they could be twins, right? But they're not related. And you tell them, "Oh my gosh, you guys like favor, you look alike." And they're like, "I look nothing like him." Like, and you're like, "What? You don't see it?" And they're looking at every minuscule difference. So yeah, I could definitely see this.
We see this all over the world, between the Argentinians and the Chileans, for example, between the French and the Belgians. And indeed, I think this is what is happening between the Brits and the Americans. But at the end of the day,
Okay, yeah. So like in the Latino community, a Mexican is not a Puerto Rican. Don't call a Puerto Rican a Mexican. Don't call a Mexican a Puerto Rican. Um, yeah, and even though they have such similar cultures, they probably would be offended if you call them the same. I kind of get where they're going with this.
feel like we make the little things that make us different much bigger than they really are.
The way that we speak and the words that we use.
Yeah.
And again, we were talking about this, weren't we?
Yeah.
About
We've been
certain
talking
words.
about things like autumn versus fall. And
Yeah.
it's like that's
Sure.
often something that people like bring up. And
They are being so nitpicky. It's like that. I think that was a Freudian example or definition he just gave us, and that's what they're doing now. And in America, just so y'all know, we say both fall and autumn. I mean, officially it is fall. Summer, winter, fall for the calendar, but we interchangeably do use autumn. We say autumn leaves. When the leaves are changing, we say autumn clothes. I mean, we use the word autumn.
well, it's because it's a simpler word, and it's like, fall, American.
You guys don't say
classic.
fall.
No, we don't say fall. We
Oh,
say
interesting.
autumn.
Okay.
Okay. So she's saying we shorten everything up to be fall, because the lazier way to say something. And there's certain cultures in America where they remove where slang is removed. I'm not gonna name the different cultures, but certain cultures will shorten up words, and it's perceived as lazy as well. But it just seems like I don't know, like they're just really coming for us. Like they're just nitpicking, looking for anything, because we do use autumn as well.
This is autumn. Not fall.
But you can say autumn as well. Personally, when I come to the UK, I have the impression that I've come halfway across the Atlantic, not just off the coast of continental Europe. And by that I mean, culturally, it feels so much more similar to the life that I had in the US. The convenience of life, the speed, the capitalism, the language.
Everyone speaks English. Everyone's like got the same sort of core values. I'm not necessarily a big Christian person at all, but we all come from this like Christian-based countries. America and Australia are English. There's some things that happen in history, but at the end of the day, we're kind of all the same group of people in that regard.
Culturally influenced.
Culturally influenced by the same group. So I personally don't see many differences at all.
America's seen as very alpha male. We think about it in terms of masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
There's an alpha maleness to Americans. And maybe it's just the way they speak, the accent, but you don't really have that.
Okay, I agree. I can't argue with that. He's telling the truth. America.
Sense of Britain. I think there's a stereotype of the repressed male, that soft spoken.
Considering we're like right on the edge of Europe, we have more in common with America in many ways than we do with the rest of Europe, which in theory is where we should be more aligned. And I think there's sort of something that can feel sort of slightly odd about that, like with the whole Brexit thing, breaking away more from where we're most closely connected to and sort of being in a situation where, we're going to end up with chlorinated chicken instead.
There's this tendency to think of Americans as just, they're simplistic, really.
Are you like annoyed?
Okay, so that's where she's talking about, and I just learned about this, that they've been like dipping the chickens in America in chlorine. Yeah, so I've watched some videos where there's been like a lot of eye openings of the food that is banned in other countries, but America still has it, or ingredients that go into food that, that are banned in other countries that we still have. And we even have like the acronym for our diet is SAD, SAD, the Standard American Diet. So yeah, I totally hear her on that one. We really do have to be proactive in America in order to eat healthier. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're one of the highest countries with diabetes for being like, a first world Western country.
Now, the interesting thing is, I love to drag the US through the mud and criticize it for all the things that I think it deserves criticism for. But the second the Brits start criticizing me or the US, you have nothing to say. Kind of like I can criticize where I grew up, but you aren't allowed to. And the British, in my opinion, are doing
People do that. Yes, people do that. Like, I can talk about my brothers and sisters, but you don't get to talk about my brothers and sisters. Yeah, for sure.
their version of the same thing, criticizing them.
And because we have so many different cultures here in America, you'll see the subset of cultures doing that too, right? I don't know how political should I get. I don't know. So I don't want to offend people, but it's kind of like when you see like a shooting that involved an African American versus a white American, there's a lot of outrage. But then when there's a shooting between black on black crime, there's not really any outrage. It's almost like, yeah, we're allowed to do that to each other, but not nobody else. And I know that's kind of more extreme than what he's talking about, but yeah, definitely. It's like, well, we're all Americans. Those are my brothers and sisters. If I want to talk crap about my brothers and sisters, I can, but not you Brits. And he's saying that the British are the same way. When he interviewed them, there's probably more they want to say that they would say amongst themselves.
Themselves to no end, but no one wants an outside opinion. Maybe we all do this. I think we all do this.
Yeah, we do all do this. It's not just a British thing. It's not just an American thing. We all do this. It's not just an African American thing. It's something that all people do.
It's like pointing at someone else's flooding house when your own house is on fire.
So I lived in America for 6 years. I lived in California, Alabama, and Oklahoma for 3 years. Everyone hears my accent.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, where in America are you from?
Okay, so I would never had heard his accent and say, where state in America are you from? I'm listening to him and I'm thinking, dude's either from the UK or Australia. I never would have heard him talk and think he must be from America. But I guess he's gotten like enough of our lingo on him that when actual British people hear him, they immediately think America. Maybe they think he's an American trying to speak with a British accent. Yeah, but he's not someone that I would listen to and say, "Oh, what state are you from in America?" You know?
Oh my God, I'm actually from Australia, but then they give me their little opinions on American stuff. So I've actually had to play defense a couple times since I've been out here.
Are you serious?
I'm so serious. I'm so serious. They talk about guns or they talk about this, but they don't have like a very good understanding, not just English people, this is people around the world, even in Australia, of the history of America and why those things became what they were. People trying to throw rocks and then hide their hands.
Yeah.
They don't want the blame to be on them. So it's easy to put it on the big superpower that is on everyone's TV.
I would say younger generations tend to be a bit more, and the only word I can think of it is shameful of the heritage. I think it's a lot of things from like colonialization and things like that. There tends to be a lot more shame around it.
Let's flip the question. How are Americans perceiving the British?
My answer to that is there is a power dynamic going on. And for better or for worse, the US is much more of a world superpower right now. So I don't think that the US feels threatened necessarily, like competitive with Great Britain. Because of that, I think there's kind of like they're
I don't know what he's going to say, but I do think we perceive the British to be more cultured. You know what I mean? Like, we know that tea time came from the British. The royal family. I know that in modern times, there's been a lot of hate thrown at the royal family from America, but in general, I think we perceive the British to be just very cultured, very reserved, a lot of old money aesthetic, the shabby chic decor came out of British cottages, just this history, lots of history. I think that's the way we look at the UK.
They're cute, you know what I mean? Like they're Harry Potter and James Bond and sophisticated and
They use words like autumn.
exactly.
We definitely think you guys are very sophisticated. That old money aesthetic.
Now, this video was definitely supposed to be in good fun. I harbor no ill will towards the British. I find our rivalries as human beings across cultures, across nations, to be comical and interesting. It's like an insight into human psychology. And as a final note, we are obviously a world of individuals. And so stereotypes never fully work. Still, I find it so fascinating to explore the stereotypes and cliches that.
All right, so that was why do the British look down on America? Let me know, did any of this resonate with you? Did you learn anything from me on my reaction to their thoughts on us? Your own thoughts, please leave it in the comments below.